Good morning, everyone. First of all, we'd like to welcome you to this presentation by the government of the Balearic Islands at this virtual edition of the World Travel Market. We hope you enjoyed the video we just shown, which was produced for this new edition of the fair. Thanks to the ladies and gentlemen of the specialized press for being here once again to learn firsthand about what our destination has to offer our UK visitors. In a moment, the President of the Balearic Islands, Francina Armengol, and the Minister for Economic Model, Tourism and Labour, Iago Negueruela, will explain the various strategic approaches to tourism that are being developed in the Balearic region. Afterwards, they will answer any questions you may have, which you should write in the chat we have opened up for this session. So please, allow me to introduce the President of the Balearic Islands, Francina Armengol.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for participating in this press conference, which is a yearly date that we have with the World Travel Market that we never miss, even when we're so heavily conditioned by a situation as complex as this pandemic. For this reason, I would like to start by thanking you for attending today, for maintaining your links with the sector and with our islands. These extraordinarily difficult moments from the islands, we'd like to reaffirm our commitment with tourism and with the British citizens, with whom we are strongly connected and have been for many decades, which will not break due to this health crisis that has a global impact and that I am convinced that we will be able to overcome over the next few months. We're all perfectly aware of the situation in the sector. Without a doubt, the most affected by this health crisis that has stopped mobility almost in its tracks. And tourism depends on mobility. This has meant a strong impact on the economy of our islands. We have suffered a 40% drop in GDP, which has a huge impact on our society, our employers, our employees, our companies, and our projects. This phenomenon is happening in destinations around the world that have been and are being affected by health, economic, and social impacts that are very similar to all of those that are territories that have traditionally been competitors but have always been brothers and sisters of our islands due to our commitment with tourism and progress. I want to transmit that the Balearic Islands, we are convinced and we have a lot of faith in the fact that we will overcome this health crisis and that our common sector will overcome this impact. If we want our economic and tourist activity to recover, we need to be able to guarantee the health of our visitors and reinforce the security and the safety of those who travel and of the citizens as well, who reside in the different destinations. This is the first lesson that we have learned in these months of pandemic. Without health, there is no economy. Without health, there's no mobility. And without health, there's no tourism. If we want mobility, tourism, and economy to return, we must act in the health area. This is the only way if we want to assure that people who today cannot travel due to health reasons, who do not wish to do it because they have lost the trust, we would like them to do it again. For this reason, because we want voyagers from and travelers and tourists from the United Kingdom to come back and enjoy our islands as soon as possible, being as it is one of our main markets, we are multiplying our efforts to be the destination that is the safest and at the same time to continue offering the best quality and the best offer. How will we do this? In spite of the pandemic, we have managed to continue leading in the arrival of international tourists thanks to the cooperation between the public and private sectors, improving sanitary controls, health controls, amplifying the resources for medical attention, reinforcing the protocols in hotels and in the complimentary offer in order to make sure that there are no contagions. We are coordinating the efforts of all the institutions to make voyagers, travelers feel safe, informed, and well attended at all times. This collaboration has been easier thanks to the fact that our private tourist sector, which is a reference around the world, is showing us the way to recover trust, so that we can continue to generate those conditions of tranquility that every person who visits our islands expects and deserves. So, in that way, cooperating in prevention and security, we can guarantee the enjoyment of those who visit us over the next few months, especially from the month of March, which is the date that we have set ourselves for the next season to open up in the best conditions. So while this moment arrives, we continue to work, preparing the prevention with controls, as I was talking to you, but also reducing the impact of COVID-19 on our islands. At this time, we are one of the least affected territories in Europe and Spain. Our accumulated incidence at 14 days is 260 cases per 100 inhabitants, which is less than half of Spain and well below the 446 of Britain, and also well below the incidents that are suffered by other countries in Europe, such as France, Holland, or Italy. And even though we're one of the least affected territories, our priority, as I was saying, is to continue to reduce this incidence with more control measures, with more tests, with more social awareness raising, and with more action in the streets, with specific spaces in order to guarantee that everyone who has contagion can be treated and can comply with confinements and quarantines. So because we know that while a vaccine does not arrive, the best way to stop the virus and so reactivate our societies and economies is prevention, individual responsibility, and collective commitment. We need to learn to live with this virus. There is no other choice, and so we are showing also that collective commitment works, that these measures that have been developed with scientific experts in our community have an effect. And in this way, we're stopping the second wave effectively in the Balearics, and even we're managing to stabilize figures on all islands, and even in Ibiza, they are descending since a week ago. So these are the reasons why we can say that we have the best health indicators in Spain, together with the Canaries, and that we are ready to improve them even more. We are working intensely with the government of Spain in order to initiate next season without any complications. We count on your support in order to face new control mechanisms that we hope will be homogeneous in Europe and that can provide tranquility and safety to all of our travelers and our visitors. And so our main aim is to achieve visitors arriving with a diagnostic test of the illness at origin. We're aware that for this there needs to be a community regulation that can establish this, and if that's not possible, from the Balearic government, we are prepared to guarantee that diagnostic tests be carried out on tourists as they arrive. At the same time, we also need to talk about a more sustainable touristic model at all levels, economically, socially, and environmentally. Reactivation also needs to walk that pathway. Our starting point is the fact that over the last few years, our tourist strategy has centered in this direction, has focused on this direction, on having Balearic Islands that love the planet, that love their land, that improve their cultural, gastronomic, and entertainment offer, who look after the planet, who protect their workers, and who are dialoguing amongst the sector to improve constantly. Sustainability, just like health safety, are and will be our quality brand. The sector knows this, and our hotels and tourist companies have been investing for years in reducing contaminating emissions and making the most of resources such as water and energy to fight climate change and to make tourism compatible with the protection of natural spaces. This also makes us more competitive in the 21st century, where we can no longer talk about growth without including in it the sustainability perspective. These islands are a natural paradise. That is what, in the first place, made the world want to visit us. And this will continue to be what makes us unique. Added now to an always innovative offer that is constantly improving and adapting itself to the evolution of clients and is respectful with the natural environment that makes us a well-known and well-loved paradise amongst British citizens. And we will continue to be that paradise, overcoming this terrible pandemic together. We will come out of this with more health safety. We will come out of this integrating efforts, cooperating amongst countries, adding the private and public sector capacities together, and adding to that the commitment and responsibility of citizens. From this pandemic, we will come out with more quality, with a sector that is more modern and technologic every day, with a sector that has a more varied and sustainable offer. From this sanitary health crisis, we will come out advancing towards a model that can stop the great threat of our times, climate change and environmental destruction, because we want to promote protection, regeneration, clean energies, and responsible use of resources. From this pandemic, we will come out with a society that is more aware of the vulnerability of humanity and the fragility of the planet, a society that is more responsible, more committed, more ethical, that will not only want to visit paradises such as our islands, they will also want to care for them and be part of them. And all of this they will find on our islands in Mallorca, Menorca, Ibiza, and Formentera. And here we hope to receive you over the next few months with the same hospitality as usual and the best offer ever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. We turn now to the Minister of Economic Model, Tourism and Labour of the Balearic Islands government, Iago Negueruela. Mr.
Vale, ahí voy. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to thank your presence here today at one of the main tourist fairs in the world. One more year, and in spite of the difficult circumstances, our islands have wanted to be present to show our commitment with the British market. This is an event at which the Balearic Islands will be present with a virtual stand, and where, from the moment the fair begins, we have programmed various events and working meetings with the British tourist sector. Even virtually, the World Travel Market is a must for the Balearic Islands, especially at this edition, since we are at a key moment for the tourist industry that has been so hardly hit by the crisis that has been generated by COVID-19. All destinations are facing a global problem that is affecting us equally. The increase in contagion, generalized contagion, has provoked that the numbers of tourists have collapsed in the whole of the Mediterranean. For the first time in decades, people are not leaving their countries, and the statistics have fallen everywhere. However, from the first moment, the government of the Balearic Islands has concentrated on reverting the situation and promoting proposals and solutions that allow us as much as possible to reinitiate the activity and recover the touristic fluxes between Britain and the Balearic Islands. We showed this last year in June when we put in place the pilot program that made the Balearics be one of the leaders in Spain throughout July and August, and we will do it again. British tourism is essential for the Balearics and for the British tourists who value very positively aspects such as the safety, the quality of the infrastructures, the good value for money, the climate, or the closeness. And that's how we want to continue to be a very close destination, and that we can, for once and for all, overcome this difficult moment together. British tourists travel to the Balearics most out of all of Spain. It's the 20% of the total of the tourism, British tourists that go to Spain come to the Balearics. That's why the figures in 2020 have collapsed for obvious reasons. That's why it's important for us to consolidate the British market that has always been faithful to the Balearics. This means we want to be a safe destination that cares for tourists, especially now, and still a quality destination. At a time like now, that means that we need to take measures to guarantee their health and well-being during their stay. And the best way to protect tourists is to protect the destination, and that's how we will be able to offer tourists an optimum experience. Our companies have already shown during the celebration of the pilot plan the efficiency and efficacy of the protocols and the measures, the safety measures that were taken at all the different workstations, as well as the well-being of all the tourists who arrived. And now we have to double our efforts and do whatever is necessary in order to reactivate our main sector. The interest for traveling to the Balearic Islands is still intact, and to make this a reality, we will define strategies jointly with all of the islands, with all of the local island governments, and with all the social agents, companies, federations, and the main stakeholders of the touristic sector in Britain, such as APTA, so as to allow, as soon as possible, to recover the touristic flows and fluxes between both territories with the maximum safety conditions. Our line of work has always been aimed at offering top safety in a key sector such as tourism. We're one of the safest communities in Spain when it comes to COVID, and at this time we're the second Spanish region with the least incidence of the illness. We know that this is something key, that is a key, that without health we won't have tourism. That's why, in the first moment, we have aimed to reduce the contagion figures of the illness on our islands, and this is the only way to position ourselves again as a safe destination. We all agree that while there is no vaccine, we need to live with COVID-19. And in this scenario, we need to see which protection mechanisms and which protocols we need to take on in order to protect our visitors, but also our residents and workers. Firstly, I'd like to inform you that on the website of the Government of the Balearics, and also at the Touristic Strategic Agency of the Balearics, AETIB, you will find all of the information referring to the regulations and the actions that the Balearics are putting in place against COVID-19, and the rules that now are applicable in order to control and avoid the spreading of this illness. These are obligatory both for tourists and for residents and are publicly available. We want tourists to be informed at all times, for them to know what is the reality at their destination and which are the rules at every moment, which will depend on how the illness is being controlled. This is the only way to be able to be a safe destination, as we always have been, and as we will continue to be in the future. For this reason, we will have top coordination, the maximum coordination between all of the stakeholders of the touristic sector on the islands, both public and private, in order to achieve a reopening of our destination with all safety measures in place on all of our islands. Only in this way will the Balearics be the touristic reference that we always have been. And as we showed last summer, when in spite of the difficulties, we were the Spanish region with the most international tourists arriving in July and August. In this context, it will be more important than ever to have very good coordination with our main markets, such as Britain, as well as to develop a higher quality touristic product that can go beyond the sun and beach traditional product through the strategic touristic segments. These SCTs are a consolidated product that define the strategy and plan the actions destined to improving the competitive position of the Balearics, improving productivity and adding value. At the same time, the Balearics are promoting sustainability mechanisms so that the tourist activity can have a long future, guaranteeing a balance that is economic, social, and territorial, and to leave behind us this pandemic situation. And we want sustainable to be our quality brand and to show that to the outside. Sustainability is key, and that's what makes us unique also. We need to care for what makes us unique, which is our islands. And that's why, and in order to guarantee a long future for British tourism in the Balearics, it's essential to work around a number of axes that allow to guarantee a very safe flow of tourists. We are promoting very clearly sustainability, both environmentally and socially. We are working towards sustainable tourism and higher quality tourism that is committed with the environment. And this means public and private institutions working together. Our natural patrimony heritage is our best asset, and so it's our duty to protect it, and it's our responsibility in order to improve our touristic product, and also it gives more value to our companies and to our citizens. Which is why also economy needs to be circular. We need to promote the principles of circular economy, focusing on business models in which differentiation and innovation are key and that are also respectful with the environment. The proof of this commitment is that today, we are presenting with the private sector and through the Impulsa Foundation a circularity strategy. We know that tourism is the motor of many other sectors, and we need to achieve best use of resources in energy, water, and food in order to achieve this circularity. There cannot be environmental sustainability without social sustainability. Tourism has a huge weight on our economy, and so it needs to be part of guaranteeing also social sustainability. The sector needs to guarantee that our workers can live off their work with good salaries, because we must not forget that the main asset of our companies is, without a doubt, human capital. And from this base, we will work from the Balearic government to make sure that the Balearic Islands are seen as a quality destination, and this requires more training in order to guarantee quality and the top position of our destination. It needs to be a quality tourism that is more family-oriented and that will leave, for once and for all, away from us the tourism of excess that has damaged our destination so much. So adapting to COVID also means leaving aside these practices for once and for all and aiming for a new touristic model. And this is the way in which we can face a future that right now is full of uncertainties, but that between us all we will overcome. We have never hidden the fact that this present and future situation is delicate, uncertain, and submitted to many changes that are often external and caused by the evolution of the epidemic. However, the recent history of our territory shows that our islands have been able to face this crisis in a decided way, and we're the first community of coming out of the previous crisis when we had economic growth and other parts of Spain still had negative figures in growth. This pandemic has forced us to adopt very difficult measures, but overcoming this crisis needs to help us to define a scenario that we had already put on the table well before anticipating the arrival of this pandemic, with quality tourism that generates quality employment and, in summary, a healthy and competitive economy. Our main priority now is to go back to the day before the pandemic.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much.
The President of the Balearic Islands, the Minister of Economic Model, Tourism and Labour, joined by the General Director for Tourism, Rosana Morillo, will answer now the questions asked in the chat during this session.
Be read in English and in Spanish. So what has been the economic impact of the coronavirus on the Balearic Island economy, both in terms of tourism and overall? ¿Cuál ha sido el impacto económico del coronavirus en la economía de las Islas Baleares, tanto en términos de turismo como en términos generales? ¿Me han oído la pregunta?
Sí, el impacto económico de COVID-19.
Yes, so the economic impact of COVID-19 on our economy, we imagine will be a 40% drop of our GDP, 28.8% of GDP, which is basically one of the highest falls that will happen all around Spain in terms of tourism and also in terms that are similar to that fall, because obviously, or connected with that fall, because obviously we're a mainly economic region. Sorry, we're mainly a touristic region. The second question, just a moment, please. ¿Es la 2? Chicos, ¿es la 2? ¿La 2? So what measures are the local authorities working on to secure tourism corridors with the UK? ¿Qué medidas están desarrollando o trabajando las autoridades locales para asegurar corredores seguros para el turismo en conexión con el Reino Unido? So we're working together with the Spanish government and the Health Ministry and the Ministry of External Affairs and of Tourism, and together also with the Canary Island government in order to develop a strategy of opening up our islands to the British Isles. These measures are aimed at facilitating travel between our islands as long as the epidemic numbers are appropriate. This would involve a diagnostic test happening at origin, and otherwise that those tests are carried out upon arrival. This is being developed together, and this is something that we are promoting with the Spanish government to guarantee and to show that the Balearic Islands and the Canary Islands are safe touristic destinations for next year's season. Ahora, like this. So how do the coronavirus figures vary from island to island? ¿Cómo varían las cifras respecto al coronavirus de isla a isla, entre islas? ¿Yo sigo entonces? Vale. So firstly, I'd like to insist again that the situation of the pandemic on the Balearics is one of the best in Spain, the second best in Spain, in fact. Obviously, we are aware, and this is a message that we want to pass on in a very clear way. We are 4 differentiated touristic destinations. Every island is a different destination with a different brand that is excellent internationally. The Mallorca brand, Menorca brand, Ibiza brand, Formentera brand. That is why we have worked very hard with the Spanish government and also with the government of the British Isles, of the United Kingdom, so that we can all understand perfectly that the situation of the pandemic on each of the islands is different, and so there can be a differentiated and safe travel protocol on each of the islands. Right now, the situation of Formentera and Menorca are one of the best of Europe when it comes to the incidence of this health pandemic. Mallorca has stabilized with figures of about 260 cases per 100,000 inhabitants. Ibiza is a little bit higher, but has been descending this week. It's important to guarantee that the average of the Balearic Islands maintains itself around 270, 260, which I insist is half of the average in Spain, and Menorca and Formentera have a situation that is even much better than any other competitor destination in Europe at the moment. How many jobs depend on tourism in the Balearics? ¿Cuántos empleos dependen del turismo en las Baleares? Acércame esto un poco más para cuando haya otra, para que lo pueda ver desde aquí, ¿sabes? So directly or indirectly, there are over 200,000 jobs, employment, that depend on the tourist sector. And so we need to put this in relation to the number of residents, which is about 1,100,000 people. So the importance of tourism is key to our economy, and that is why we're making all necessary efforts to reactivate this sector as soon as possible. Given the high infection rates in the UK, how will tourism policy also protect local residents? Dada la alta tasa de infección en el Reino Unido, ¿cómo va la política turística a proteger también a los residentes locales? As a community, the Balearic Islands have a strategy from day one. First, health, and secondly, economy. Without health, there is no economy. So, the health protection for our citizens, for everyone who visits us, is our main concern. The main concern of our government, the number one concern of the Balearic government. So our strategy has been to reinforce the health system considerably. We are a region that has hired a lot more health staff, particularly in primary attention, so as not to congest our hospitals, and we can proudly say that we have an excellent health service that has not been overwhelmed at any point, not in the first wave and not in the second wave, which right now there's a lot of tranquility, both in the private and the public health safety system, or health system, sorry. Secondly, we have hired many trackers that make it possible to locate any contagion and isolate it, and that way avoid the spreading of the illness. And the number of trackers is a lot higher than the WHO recommends. Thirdly, we're the only region in Spain that guarantees spaces, safe spaces, or bridge hotels, as we call them, both for tourists and for residents who need to do a quarantine and don't have space at home, or there are tourists who are visiting us, and so we guarantee spaces on each of the islands to be able to carry out that quarantine. We also have a very high strategy of population testing. We're using PCRs more frequently with citizens, but also the antigen tests are now being used widespreadly around the health system and primary attention system. It's also very important to say that we're carrying out community measures in each of the regions where we have the most incidents. This means that we offer the population where we see a high incidence that has accumulated a whole structure of community works, social services, health health services, education services, platforms and social institutions that work together in order to do a work of raising awareness amongst citizens to explain how they need to protect themselves from contagion, how to carry out a quarantine, and in those populations we are carrying out more tests and forcing them to go into quarantine. And so we are checking on those areas that have higher incidence, and in that way, given different political decisions that have been made respect to different measures, we have been able to reinforce the health system and avoid the spreading of the illness. It's also key to be able to guarantee that safety in mobility. So from the very first moment, we asked for a common strategy between the Schengen countries to guarantee negative tests in origin to travel to our community. We have asked for this from the beginning to the health ministry of our country. I had the honor of participating in the conference of autonomic presidents with Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Community, and I have also asked for a strategy in that sense, and we have also talked about this with the British government. As the minister was saying just before me, we want to guarantee that safe corridor. So when the incidence is low, they can travel without any problem, but when the incidence is higher, a test upon origin or upon arrival needs to be put into place. ¿Se tiene alguna idea de cuándo se confirmará y o cuándo se podría empezar a implementar la normativa de los tests en origen para turistas? Do you have any idea of when this regulation will be confirmed or put into place regarding tests at origin for tourists? We know that for months now, different governments have been talking, as is logical, on how to carry out or develop a safe strategy to guarantee mobility, because it's essential for tourism, and in many countries, tourism is an essential sector, obviously for Spain and obviously for our region, in particular, the Balearic Islands. That's why for a while now, the different countries are talking about how to do this. In our region, we were able to do a pilot project with Germany, which was carried out in the beginning of the summer, and we're now developing the safe corridors that are established with the Ministry of Spain, together with the different countries that are sending their tourists out to this region and also to the Canary Islands, such as Britain and Germany as main markets. We know that the Spanish government is working intensely to make those safety controls possible prior to arrival, and we hope that we can announce that news as soon as possible. How are the authorities supporting the local travel industry? ¿Cómo están las autoridades apoyando la industria de viaje local? There is a widespread strategy put in place from the beginning of the pandemic, together with the local government and with the Spanish government, to protect our main industry. Spain and our islands, very clearly and in a very negotiated way, have clearly decided to protect employment, maintaining jobs, so that companies can maintain the employment figures they had before the pandemic with temporary measures. So we're protecting our business sector and protecting it so that it maintains itself and stays alive, which is key for us to be able to recover as soon as possible. Our companies need to continue to be active and giving employment to their workers. This is a strategy that is also supported by the governments of our islands, who are offering financial help to the island businesses with guarantees and with financial tools for support. Also, we're offering help to particular types of businesses, especially small ones. All these strategies are aimed at maintaining that network of local businesses and local employment, and that they can receive subsidies while the tourist activity cannot be resumed. This is the strategy that we have decided to take on, is to maintain our industry alive while we wait for recovery as soon as possible. Before the pandemic, and what are the prospects for recovery? ¿Y cómo era el comercio del turismo antes de la pandemia y cuáles son las perspectivas de su recuperación?
Desde luego, hace un año,
certainly a year ago, at the World Travel Market, in fact, we were talking about the excellent perspectives that the British country had for 2020. So we knew that British tourism was aiming for our islands in a big way. And we have the feeling, still, after interviewing all of the different stakeholders, that once touristic activity is recovered, once the pandemic is under control, once we have installed control mechanisms, British tourism will come back, and will come back strongly, because they're looking forward to visiting us again. So the expectation for 2021 is for recovery, definitely not at the levels of 2019, but definitely improving considerably. What safety measures have the islands put in place to protect residents and visitors? ¿Cuáles son las medidas de seguridad que han puesto en marcha las islas para proteger a residentes y visitantes? I was explaining this a little in one of the previous questions that were asked. The clearest measure is to guarantee a good health system, so to protect residents well and visitors too. We have done this by increasing and improving the health system on our islands, and we are doing this by increasing the trackers, controlling very well when somebody has the illness, if they have symptoms and they need a hospital, to have free beds in the hospitals. And today, we can guarantee that 100% on the islands. If they don't have symptoms, whether they're residents or tourists, we offer them the possibility of staying at a specific hotel where they can do a quarantine as it should be, and the Balearic government will cover that cost. We're also protecting the population in the schools. There's been an excellent beginning of the school year with very few contagions in the schools, guaranteeing as well to those most vulnerable, the elders, that we're doing our best to avoid contagions. We're doing massive testing in all people's homes on the islands. We're doing particularly stringent tests in places where there are more or higher incidence, and when we have villages or towns that have a high incidence, we take immediate measures of restriction to protect the population with intense testing systems and with educating the population about this. And also, I'd like to say again that we need those controls when it comes to the mobility of people who are coming into our region. With all of that and much more, we have achieved the Balearics reaching the position of the second best region in Spain, or in other words, the second least incidence in Spain. And so the second wave is descending here, and it started later than in other places in Europe, and the situation now is much better already. So we're working constantly to reinforce our health system, to educate and communicate with the population, and to carry out appropriate controls to fight against this terrible illness. And obviously, the vaccine that was announced yesterday, it was announced that it may be with us faster, is a great hope for the Balearics and for the whole world. What are your predictions for 2021 in terms of recovery, and how long do you anticipate it will take to achieve pre-pandemic levels of tourism? ¿Cuáles son sus predicciones para el año 2021 en cuanto a recuperación y cuánto tiempo estiman que se tardará en recuperar los niveles de turismo prepandémicos?
Nuestras predicciones es desde luego
Our prediction is certainly by 2021 to recover our economy by 11% of the GDP, which is an important growth for 2021 and a beginning of recovery that needs to be complemented over the next couple of years fully. So we expect a recovery to pre-COVID levels by 2022. Medical advances regarding controls, massive controls, testing, etc., is one of the opportunities so that we can live with COVID-19. The announcement made yesterday regarding the vaccine also sets different perspectives and a different future for international tourism. We will work to guarantee that we are the safe destination that we always have been. We will take on all the necessary measures for this, that we will support clearly and in a decided way the recovery of our economic sector, and hopefully in 2021 that recovery will begin. The reservations for 2020 are now already being put forward to 2021. So already there's an important number of reservations there, and we hope that it will mark the beginning of the recovery of our islands, but also we hope it will be the beginning of the recovery at global level due to the thousands of workers who work in this sector and for the thousands of companies that live off the tourist sector. So we hope to be able to see that recovery, the beginning of that recovery in 2021, thanks to us being seen as the safe and quality destination that we have been, are, and will continue to be.
With this, we will conclude this presentation by the Government of the Balearic Islands at this virtual edition of the World Travel Market. It's been an absolute pleasure to share this session with you. We hope to welcome you all to our islands very soon. Thank you very much.